Here. I want to tell you a story about two boy bands that were allegedly feuding.
Story.
Okay, here I'm going to
epic battle.
I'm going to do this quickly, and then we're going to bring in Brian Luttrell from Backstreet Boys to talk about this. So here's the deal. You've heard of One Direction. They're huge now. Everybody's saying they're like the new Beatles, and believe me, I'm not saying Beatles, but they're all, you know, all these girls are crazy for them. So it's this English band. They're a kind of squeaky clean band. Then there's another band called The Wanted. They are far more edgy than...
A little older, a little edgier.
And they're, you know, some people say kind of hooligan-y. So rough around the edges. So what happened was last week, One Direction was at a place called Center Staging Studios in Burbank. It's a place where a lot of bands rehearse. They were in one of the studios rehearsing for their Saturday Night Live performance, which was coming up and it would actually air last Saturday. So they're playing. They find out that The Wanted is coming to an adjacent studio shortly to rehearse for doing American Idol the next day. And the people from One Direction, all the band members, flip out because they have read all this press that there's a feud going on, that there's smack talk. They were literally scared, and we got this from sources at Center Staging. They were scared that the guys from The Wanted would come in and rough them up and maybe beat them up. So they decided to end the rehearsal, and they were going to leave. But before they could, the group, The Wanted, shows up at the front door with security. So they start to walk in. The security for One Direction walks over to the security for The Wanted, and they say, look, you guys better make sure that your band, The Wanted, doesn't beat up our guys, One Direction, because of this feud.
Hey, by the way, shouldn't the security be taking care of that?
So, well, that's true.
They're supposed to be protecting them. Like, hey, please don't hit our guys.
So the security from The Wanted says, what are you talking about? And then that security goes over to the kids from The Wanted, and they say, are you guys going to beat the One Direction up? And then the story kind of unfolds, and the guys from One Direction go running in to...
No, the guys from The Wanted.
The Wanted go running into the studio where One Direction is packing up, and they say, guys, come on. And they hug each other, except for this guy Louis in One Direction, who apparently was still so scared that Louis stayed away from everybody and wouldn't go near The Wanted. So that's the feud.
But I imagine they ran into the studio to sort of scare them, making them... They were playing a prank on them. They probably ran in thinking, all right, we're going to scare them like we're going to beat them up, and then they just gave them a hug.
Right. Well, I don't know that they actually, because I think One Direction would have peed their pants. So here's what we're going to do.
Well, I'm hoping that's what they
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to find out about the rivalries. And I think the best person to find out about the rivalries from is somebody from the Backstreet Boys, because you had the Backstreet Boys and you had NSYNC.
Right.
And that's the classic.
Did he ever go toe-to-toe with Justin Timberlake?
Was there ever that kind of animosity between the two? So we're going to bring Brian Luttrell in, and we're going to ask him about that. So you're watching TMZ Live. We're going to be back in a flash.
Boy band battles. Okay, welcome back to TMZ Live. We just laid out the most epic battle in Hollywood this year, if not of the decade.
Two bands, One Direction and The Wanted
versus One Direction. One Direction cowering in the corner, terrified that The Wanted was going to kick their butts, and The Wanted actually playing nice with them and just giving them a little hug.
But the question, is there that kind of rivalry? And I got to tell you, I think there is a rivalry, whether they admit it or not. The best people to ask are people who have been through this. Brian Luttrell, member of the Backstreet Boys, maybe one of the biggest boy bands for sure ever, joins us on the phone right now. Brian, welcome to TMZ Live. We love getting you on TMZ, that's for sure.
What's going on, Harvey? How you guys doing?
We're good. So, Brian, you guys had a rivalry with NSYNC for sure. I mean, there had to be that feeling that you wanted to be bigger, better, more popular than NSYNC. How much did that escalate?
Well, I'll tell you, it got pretty heated when, you know, NSYNC came. NSYNC came right out of our backyard. You know, the Backstreet Boys were together in Orlando almost 20 years ago, and then NSYNC got the same guys, the same managers, the same writers, the same label. So it was a huge ordeal. Now we played it off in the media like it wasn't a big deal, because But in words of Justin Timberlake, I'll say, what goes around, goes around, comes all the way back around, yeah. You know, and for the musically challenged, that means that, you know, NSYNC, you know, here's the truth to the story, TMZ Live. NSYNC came right out of Backstreet Boys' backyard. They had the same managers, they had the same writers, they had the same producers, they had the same record label.
Did you resent them?
I don't resent NSYNC, but I resent the access that they had to their big brothers, Backstreet Boys, breaking down the doors. Because we really did. You know, we broke down Europe many, many years before they did. And so when they walked through, it was kind of like this golden path for them to just stroll right behind. So, but again, like I go back to, I don't want people to get the wrong impression, because NSYNC was super talented. They had great songs, but at the same time, they had a wonderful opportunity. It's like kids on American Idol or the competition shows today. You know, they didn't have those things years ago. They didn't have, you know, they didn't have the internet even when Backstreet Boys came out.
But I gotta ask you, did you ever have a situation where you guys came face to face where there was animosity between the two, if you did resent the concept of them basically on your coattails?
Listen, let me tell you, the very first time I met Justin Timberlake, okay, he's a tiny little kid, and I don't have any qualms with Justin. Justin's a super talented guy. But I'll tell you this, when he shook his hand, he looked me in the eye, and you know the first words he said to me?
What?
He said, "I've got you down."
Wow. So he threw down the gauntlet right from the get-go.
So the thing was, it was like, wow, okay. I mean, is that what he was supposed to be? Was like, did they contrive the, okay, you take this guy and you take this guy and you get, you know, like I didn't know that then. You know what I mean? But again, you take away Justin from NSYNC, and obviously NSYNC is no longer, unfortunate.
So in the case, last question, in the case of One Direction versus The Wanted, one group, One Direction squeaky clean, the other kind of rough, which one endures better?
Wow. It depends on how they evolve. You know, it depends on how they evolve, because the music scene today is so fast. It's super fast. So I would say, you know, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, One Direction being squeaky clean, I think they have further to go when it comes to messing up. Because if you go to The Wanted and those guys are dressed in black leather jackets, I mean, who knows? How can you grow up that fast in pop music? You can't. You have to start squeaky clean so that you can make mistakes and you can become real. I think that's the true philosophy of pop music right there.
Okay,
cool. Wait, which one are you guys? So is Backstreet The Wanted or One Direction?
That's a good question.
Well, I think now we would be The Wanted because we're 20 years older. But I think then, you know, when we started, we were definitely One Direction.
Hey, listen, we really